What if humanity's greatest weakness became the galaxy's most feared strength? What if the very thing that made other species dismiss us as primitive savages was actually our ultimate weapon? When the Galactic Council received Earth's final transmission, they expected surrender. Instead, they got 4 words that would haunt every alien civilization for generations to come: your destiny is sealed. The universe thought it knew humans. They were wrong. This is the story of how a dying world's last message became the foundation of the greatest empire the cosmos had ever seen. This is the tale of why advanced alien races still whisper human names in the dark. This is the chronicle of how Earth's children turned their species' darkest hour into the galaxy's judgment day. Prepare to discover what happens when humanity stops asking for permission and starts taking what's theirs by right of conquest. The stars themselves will never be the same. The quantum communicator crackled to life in the depths of the Terran command bunker, its blue glow casting eerie shadows across the faces of Earth's last defenders. Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the incoming transmission with hollow eyes, her uniform torn and bloodstained from the surface battles that had raged for 72 hours straight. The alien fleet hung in orbit like a malevolent crown of thorns, their weapons charged and ready to deliver humanity's final judgment. Admiral, Lieutenant Torres called from his station, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's the Galactic Council. They're offering terms." Chen's laugh was bitter as ashes. Around her, the command staff exchanged glances filled with exhaustion and resignation. The Zephyrian Empire had come with overwhelming force, supported by their council allies, demanding Earth's immediate surrender and the total subjugation of the human species. Their crime? Daring to expand beyond their home system without permission from the galaxy's self-appointed rulers. "Put it through," Chen ordered, straightening her shoulders despite the weight of defeat pressing down on her. The holographic display flickered, revealing the elongated features of High Magistrate Vexthal, his forearms spread in what his species considered a gesture of magnanimity. Behind him stood representatives from a dozen alien races, their expressions ranging from cold indifference to barely concealed smugness. Admiral Chen, Vexthal's translated voice carried the mechanical tone of the universal translator. "Your resistance has been admirable but futile. Earth's surface burns, your colonies have fallen, and your fleets lie broken in the void. The Galactic Council offers final terms." Chen remained silent, her dark eyes fixed on the alien magistrate's face. Around the command center, her officers worked with quiet efficiency, some monitoring the increasingly desperate reports from the surface, others maintaining the bunker's failing systems. The air recyclers wheezed with each breath, and the lights flickered intermittently as power systems strained under the bombardment above. "Unconditional surrender," Vexthal continued, his primary hands folded while his secondary arms gestured expansively. "Your species will be relocated to reservation worlds where you will live under Council supervision. Your technology will be confiscated, your weapons destroyed, your expansion permanently halted. In exchange, we offer mercy. Your children will live, though they will know their place in the galactic hierarchy." "Generous," Chen replied, her tone flat. "And if we refuse?" The Zephyrians' mandibles clicked in what passed for their version of amusement. "Then, Earth becomes a monument to the folly of defying the Council's will. Every human city will burn until nothing remains but ash and memory. Your species will join the archaeological record." Other members of the Council delegation nodded their agreement. The crystalline hegemony's representative, a being of living mineral and cold logic, stepped forward with movements like grinding stone. "Admiral Chen, your species is young and impulsive. You lack the wisdom to govern yourselves, much less expand among the stars. Accept the Council's guidance." Chen's executive officer, Commander James Morrison, shifted beside her. His face was stone, but she could see the rage burning behind his eyes. Morrison had lost his family in the orbital bombardments, his wife and daughter among millions of civilians who had died when the alien fleet opened fire without warning. "You have 1 hour to decide," Vexthal announced. "After that, our patience expires with your species." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in suffocating silence. Chen stared at the empty holographic display, her mind racing through possibilities that all led to the same conclusion. Earth's military had fought valiantly, but they faced an enemy with technology centuries ahead of human science. Every battle had been a desperate delaying action, buying time for evacuation ships that would never come in sufficient numbers. "Admiral," Morrison's voice was rough with emotion. "Orders?" Chen walked to the tactical display that showed Earth's grim situation. Red markers indicated where alien forces had established beachheads on every continent. Blue markers, representing human resistance, grew fewer by the hour. In orbit, the remains of Earth's proud fleet drifted as debris fields, testament to humanity's courage and the enemy's overwhelming superiority. "They think they understand us," she said quietly, her fingers tracing patterns on the display. "They think we're just another primitive species to be dominated and caged." Lieutenant Torres looked up from his communications console. "Ma'am, we're receiving scattered reports from the colonies. The ones that haven't fallen are requesting instructions." Chen nodded slowly. Humanity had spread to 37 worlds in the past 50 years, driven by an insatiable hunger to explore and expand that the aliens found threatening. Most of those colonies were small, barely established settlements with minimal defenses. They would fall quickly once the Council turned its attention to them. "Get me Captain Rodriguez on the Barcelona," Chun ordered. "If she's still alive." The quantum communicator struggled to establish connection through the interference generated by the orbital bombardment. Finally, a voice emerged from the static, weak but determined. "Rodriguez here, Admiral. We're barely holding together up here. Captain, how many of our deep space vessels remain operational?" 3 destroyers, maybe 4 frigates scattered across the outer system. The Yamato took heavy damage, but she's still fighting. "Why?" Chen glanced around at her staff, seeing the same understanding dawning on their faces. They were going to die here, all of them. Earth would burn, and humanity's expansion would end in fire and subjugation. But perhaps their death could serve a greater purpose. "Captain, I need you to gather every functional ship and prepare for a deep space mission. Maximum range, beyond the galactic rim if necessary." Morrison stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Admiral, what are you thinking?" "The aliens want to teach us our place," Chen replied, her voice growing stronger. "They want to show the galaxy what happens to species that dare to dream beyond their borders. They think human expansion ends here, with Earth's surrender." She turned to face her command staff, and they saw something in her eyes that made them stand straighter despite their exhaustion. It wasn't hope, exactly, but something harder and more dangerous. "They're wrong. Get me a secure channel to all remaining human military assets, colonies, and deep space vessels. Override everything, Priority Alpha." Torres's fingers flew over his console. "Channel open, Admiral." All call signs responding. Chen took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would either doom humanity or ensure their ultimate survival. Around her, the bunker shook as another wave of alien bombardment pounded the surface. Dust fell from the ceiling, and emergency lights bathed everything in hellish red. "All human forces, all colonies, all vessels beyond the Sol system, this is Admiral Chen with Emergency Protocol 7. Earth is lost. The Galactic Council demands our complete surrender and permanent subjugation. They offer us cages on reservation worlds, supervised by our conquerors." Static crackled through the transmission, carrying voices from across human space. Some were calm, others desperate, all of them waiting for orders that would determine their species' fate. "As of this moment, all human military assets are to go dark. Scatter to the galactic rim and beyond. Establish hidden bases, gather resources, study alien technology, and prepare. The Council thinks they're ending human expansion today. Instead, they're creating something they cannot comprehend." Morrison caught her meaning first, his eyes widening. "Admiral, you're talking about a human diaspora unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen," Chen continued, her voice carrying across the quantum channels to every human outpost among the stars. "They want to teach us our place? Let them try. When we return, we won't be asking permission." The transmission was interrupted by proximity alarms. On the tactical display, Council landing craft were descending toward the bunker's location. They had perhaps minutes before enemy forces breached the facility. "All vessels, you have your orders. Survive, adapt, and remember what they did to Earth. Remember what they did to our families, our children, our dreams of walking free among the stars." Chen's voice hardened to steel. "This is not humanity's end. This is our beginning." She gestured to Torres, who opened a direct channel to the Council fleet. The holographic display activated again, showing Vexthal's expectant face. "High Magistrate," Chen said with perfect calm. "I have Earth's answer to your generous offer. Excellent, Admiral. You've chosen wisdom over pride. Your species will learn to appreciate the Council's guidance in time. Chen smiled, and something in that expression made the alien step back. Around the command center, her officers stood at attention, their faces reflecting the same dangerous calm. Actually, Magistrate, I'm calling to deliver a different message. Not Earth's surrender, but Earth's promise. Vexthal's mandibles clicked with confusion. I do not understand. You will, Chen replied. Tell the Galactic Council that Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force sends her regards. Tell them that Earth's children are going into the dark, but we're not disappearing. We're evolving. The Zephyrian's forearms spread in agitation. Admiral, your planet burns around you. Your fleets are destroyed. What possible threat can your scattered remnants pose to the Council's might? Chen's smile widened, and her officers exchanged glances filled with grim satisfaction. They were about to die, but their deaths would mean something. Their sacrifice would plant seeds that would grow in the darkness between stars. Magistrate, let me leave you with 4 words that I want you to remember when human ships start appearing in places they shouldn't be. When human colonies take root on worlds you thought safe. When human technology starts exceeding your own through methods you can't understand. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle across the channel. Your destiny is sealed. The transmission cut off, leaving Vexthal staring at an empty display while the sound of breaching charges echoed through the bunker's corridors. Shen turned to her staff, seeing acceptance and fierce pride in their faces. For Earth, she said quietly. For humanity, they replied in unison. The bunker's blast doors exploded inward, and alien soldiers poured into the command center. But they found only empty stations and the lingering echo of humanity's promise, carried on quantum waves to every corner of human space where ships were already going dark and slipping away into the void. Above Earth's burning surface, Vexthal stared at his instruments, a cold feeling settling in his thorax. The human fleet was gone, vanished into hyperspace like shadows fleeing the dawn. Intelligence reports indicated that human colonies across the galaxy were simultaneously going silent, their communications ceasing as if by coordinated signal. Status report, he demanded. High Magistrate, we're detecting massive power signatures from human settlements before they go dark. They appear to be destroying their own infrastructure to prevent capture. Vexthal's mandibles clicked nervously. This wasn't how conquered species behaved. They begged, they bargained, they accepted subjugation in exchange for survival. They didn't disappear into the darkness with promises of return. Continue the bombardment, he ordered, but doubt not at his certainty. Humanity is finished. Yet as he watched Earth's cities burn, Admiral Chen's final words echoed in his mind with prophetic weight. Somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, human ships were carrying more than refugees and military remnants. They carried humanity's dreams of expansion, transformed by this moment into something far more dangerous. They carried humanity's hunger for revenge. 27 years after Earth's fall, Captain Marcus Webb crouched in the maintenance tunnel of the derelict Zephyrian Research Station, his modified scanner detecting alien patrol patterns 3 levels above. The station orbited a dead world in the Kepler sector, officially abandoned according to Council records but secretly housing some of the Empire's most sensitive xenoarchaeological research. Webb's team moved like ghosts through the station's bowels, their equipment scavenged and improved beyond original specifications. Human engineering had evolved in the decades since the diaspora, shaped by necessity and driven by an unquenchable thirst for advantages over their former conquerors. What the Council had failed to understand about humanity was that adversity didn't break them. It made them more dangerous. Contact ahead, whispered Elena Vasquez, the team's infiltration specialist. Her great-grandfather had died defending Luna Base during the final siege. Now she hunted Council assets across the galaxy with methodical precision. 2 guards, standard patrol route. Webb nodded, checking his chronometer. Timing was everything in operations like this. Across the galaxy, similar human cells were conducting simultaneous strikes against Council infrastructure. Not enough to trigger major response, but sufficient to demonstrate that Earth's children hadn't forgotten their promise. The guards rounded the corner, their conversation carried through the thin atmosphere in mechanical translation. Zephyrian soldiers discussing their upcoming rotation, complaints about duty assignments, typical military chatter. They never saw the humans emerging from shadow until neural disruptors sent them into unconsciousness. Drag them into the storage compartment, Webb ordered. We need 40 minutes before their absence is noticed. His team worked with practiced efficiency. Dr. James Kim, grandson of a sole professor who had died in the bombardments, accessed the station's research computers while Vasquez established overwatch positions. Tommy Chen, no relation to the legendary admiral but carrying her name with fierce pride, began downloading tactical data about Council fleet movements. Webb monitored their progress while studying schematics of the station's archaeological vault. According to their intelligence, gathered over months of careful observation, the Zephyrians had discovered ruins on the planet below. Ruins that predated all known galactic civilizations, containing technology that might shift the balance of power. Captain, Kim's voice was tight with excitement. You need to see this. Webb moved to the computer terminal, scanning the alien text that Kim's translation software was slowly decoding. What he read made his blood turn cold with possibilities. The ruins weren't just ancient. They were human. That's impossible, Vasquez said, reading over his shoulder. Humans never reached this sector before the diaspora. But the evidence was undeniable. The archaeological reports detailed structures matching human architectural principles, artifacts bearing symbols similar to ancient Earth cultures, and, most importantly, genetic markers that registered as distinctly human in origin. There's more, Kim continued, his fingers dancing across the alien interface. According to this, the ruins show evidence of advanced space travel technology. The Zephyrians think they found proof of a previous spacefaring human civilization that existed thousands of years ago. Webb's mind raced through implications. If humans had reached the stars before, if Earth hadn't been humanity's first home but merely one of many, then the entire foundation of galactic politics was built on false assumptions. The Council had conquered Earth believing they were dealing with primitives making their first tentative steps into space. Instead, they might have awakened something with roots far deeper than anyone imagined. Download everything, he ordered. This changes the entire game. Tommy Chen looked up from his tactical analysis station. Boss, we've got bigger problems. These fleet movement reports show Council forces massing for something big. Looks like they're planning a sweep of the Rim sectors. Webb cursed silently. The Rim had become humanity's refuge, scattered settlements and hidden bases established by refugees from the diaspora. If the Council was planning a systematic sweep, thousands of human lives were at risk. How long do we have? Based on supply requisitions and fleet assembly patterns, maybe 6 months. They're being careful, building overwhelming force before they move. Vasquez finished securing the unconscious guards and rejoined the group. Captain, we should abort. This intelligence is too valuable to risk. But Webb stared at the archaeological data scrolling across his screen, seeing possibilities that went far beyond simple survival. The Council ruled through technological superiority and the belief that they represented the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. If humanity could prove their heritage predated Council authority, if they could claim legitimacy as the galaxy's original spacefaring race. Negative. We're going down to the ruins. Sir, that's not the mission, Kim protested. We were supposed to gather intelligence and extract. The mission just changed. Webb began accessing the station's transportation systems. If these ruins really are human, then we're not refugees hiding in the dark anymore. We're the rightful inheritors of galactic civilization. The shuttle bay was lightly guarded, the Zephyrians confident that their hidden research station posed no attraction to raiders. Webb's team neutralized the lone technician on duty and commandeered an alien survey craft, its systems familiar after years of studying captured Council technology. The planet below was a wasteland of shattered continents and poisoned seas, victim of some ancient catastrophe that had occurred millennia before the Council's rise to power. But buried beneath the devastation lay structures that sang to Webb with architectural harmony he recognized from images of ancient Earth. The survey craft's sensors detected the main archaeological site, a massive complex carved into a mountain range. Zephyrian excavation equipment surrounded the ruins, but the dig site appeared abandoned for the day cycle. Its workers rotated back to the orbital station. Setting down 2 kilometers from the primary site, Webb announced. We go in quiet, gather what we can, and get out before anyone notices we're gone. The ruins took his breath away. Even half buried by millennia of geological shift, the structures displayed unmistakably human proportions and aesthetics. Corridors built for beings of human height, chambers designed around human social patterns, artwork that spoke to fundamentally human sensibilities. But it was the technology that truly amazed him. Power systems still functioned after countless years, their energy signatures unlike anything in Council databases. Crystalline matrices hummed with stored information, their data storage capacity exceeding modern human understanding. Most incredibly, star charts covered chamber walls, showing galactic positions from an era when current civilizations hadn't yet achieved spaceflight. My God, Kim breathed, running scanners over an intact control console. This technology is centuries ahead of current Council capabilities. Maybe thousands of years ahead. Webb studied the star charts, recognizing constellations but noting differences that suggested extreme age. Earth appeared on the maps, but as one world among many in what seemed to be a vast human stellar empire. Trade routes connected dozens of systems, showing expansion patterns that dwarfed humanity's modern achievements. What happened to them? Vasquez wondered aloud. Tommy Chen discovered part of the answer in a chamber filled with historical records. His translation software struggled with the ancient human language, but gradually assembled a narrative of catastrophe and deliberate sacrifice. According to this, they faced something called the Void Plague. Not a disease, but some kind of energy-based phenomenon that consumes civilizations from within. When they realized they couldn't stop it, He paused, double-checking his translation. They initiated something called the Rebirth Protocol. Webb moved to Chen's position, studying the records over his shoulder. The ancient humans had faced extinction, but rather than simply dying, they had chosen to scatter their essence across time and space. Genetic repositories, cultural archives, technological seeds hidden on countless worlds, waiting for humanity to rediscover its heritage. They deliberately regressed their own civilization, Kim said, understanding dawning in his voice. They sent their people back to primitive worlds like Earth, hiding their advanced knowledge until the species was ready to reclaim it. And, now? Webb asked. Now the Rebirth Protocol is activating. Human expansion into space, the conflict with the Council, even our discovery of these ruins, it's all part of the pattern they established. We're not just descendants of the humans who left Earth. We're the inheritors of the galaxy's first stellar empire. Webb felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. Admiral Chen's final message suddenly carried new meaning. Humanity's destiny hadn't been sealed by the Council's conquest of Earth. It had been sealed millennia ago by their own ancestors, who had prepared for this exact moment. Download everything, he ordered. Every file, every star chart, every piece of technology we can understand. And prep a quantum burst transmission to all human cells across the galaxy. Sir, that will reveal our position to Council forces, Vasquez warned. It doesn't matter. What matters is getting this information to our people before the Council can suppress it. As his team worked frantically to copy ancient human databases, Webb composed the message that would change everything. Not just intelligence about Council fleet movements or technological discoveries, but proof that humanity's claim to the stars predated every other galactic civilization by thousands of years. Hours later, as they fled the planet with Council patrol ships converging on their position, Webb's quantum transmission reached human cells from the core worlds to the galactic rim. The message was simple but devastating in its implications. To all human forces, we have found proof of our true heritage. Humanity ruled the galaxy before the Council existed. The ruins contain technology and star charts that establish our legitimate claim to galactic leadership. The Council hasn't conquered primitives, they've occupied the territory of the galaxy's rightful rulers. Prepare for Phase 2 of the Rebirth Protocol. The time for hiding is over. Across human space, scattered refugees and hidden colonies received the transmission with growing amazement. In secret bases carved from asteroids, human scientists began analyzing the technological data Webb's team had transmitted. On hidden worlds at the galaxy's edge, military commanders started planning operations that went far beyond simple survival. The diaspora was about to become something the Council had never anticipated. Not a scattering of defeated refugees, but the reformation of humanity's original galactic empire. Webb's ship jumped to hyperspace just ahead of the Council patrol fleet, carrying its crew toward a rendezvous with other human cells. Behind them, Zephyrian archaeologists would arrive at their ruined site to find everything stolen, their research months destroyed in a single night's work. But the theft was merely the beginning. As word spread through human networks, as ancient technology was reverse-engineered and forgotten star charts were studied, a new phase of human expansion began. This time, they wouldn't be asking permission from anyone. High Magistrate Vexthal, now elevated to the Council's highest ranks after his successful pacification of Earth, received reports of the archaeological theft with growing unease. Something about the precision of the operation, the specific targets chosen, spoke to intelligence networks and capabilities that defeated species shouldn't possess. Double security at all research installations, he ordered his subordinates. And increase patrol frequencies in the rim sectors. I want every human refugee found and eliminated. But, deep in his thorax, a cold certainty was growing. Admiral Chen's words echoed across the years, your destiny is sealed. What if she hadn't been speaking of human destiny, but council destiny? What if Earth's fall had been the beginning of something far more dangerous than simple revenge? As reports filtered in of increased human activity across the galaxy, Vexthal began to understand that he might have made the greatest mistake in galactic history. They hadn't conquered humanity. They had awakened it. The war began not with massive fleets clashing in space, but with the systematic disappearance of Council authority across the galaxy's outer regions. Governor Thexmar of the Arcturus Mining Consortium discovered this the hard way when she arrived at Facility 7 to find every alien overseer missing and human workers calmly continuing their operations under new management. Where are my administrators? She demanded of the human work crew leader, a weathered man whose identification listed him as Michael Santos. They resigned, Santos replied with perfect calm, his voice carrying the hint of an accent that suggested origins from Earth's former American continents. Quite suddenly, actually. Apparently they received better offers elsewhere. Thexmar's security detail shifted nervously behind her. The mining facility's layout hadn't changed, the equipment continued functioning at optimal efficiency, but something fundamental had altered. The humans moved with new confidence, their posture no longer displaying the submissive deference that had marked the past 3 decades. That's impossible. Council administrators cannot simply resign from their posts. Santos smiled, and the expression contained depths that made Thexmar step backward. Governor, respectfully, you might want to review the legal framework for your authority in this sector. Recent archaeological discoveries have raised some interesting questions about territorial jurisdiction. Before she could respond, alerts began cascading through her personal communicator. Similar reports from across her administrative region, facilities operating without council oversight, human workers claiming authority through legal precedents that didn't exist in any database, alien supervisors found unconscious and relocated to safe positions away from active sites. This is rebellion, Thexmar declared, but her voice lacked conviction. The humans weren't behaving like rebels. They were acting like legal authorities exercising legitimate power. Actually, Governor, it's restoration. Santos gestured toward a holographic display that hadn't been part of the facility's original equipment. Would you like to see the documentation that establishes human territorial claims in this sector? It's quite comprehensive. Goes back about 12,000 years. The display activated, showing star charts and territorial boundaries that predated Council civilization by millennia. Ancient human settlements, trade routes, and administrative centers mapped across regions that the Council had considered wilderness when they first achieved spaceflight. This is fabricated, Thexmar protested, but her species possessed keen senses for deception, and nothing about the documentation triggered her instinctive warnings. The archaeological evidence was extensive, the technological verification signatures matched accepted authentication protocols, and the legal framework referenced precedents that existed in the deepest levels of galactic law. Santos nodded understanding. We thought you might say that. Which is why we've submitted our territorial claims to the Galactic Arbitration Court for official review. Until the matter is resolved, we're operating under provisional authority granted by the Reclamation Accords. Thexmar's mandibles clicked with confusion. The Reclamation Accords don't exist. Actually, they do. Article 847 of the original Council Charter provides for the restoration of territorial rights to previously spacefaring civilizations whose claims predate current administrative boundaries. The Council wrote the law believing it would never be invoked, since they assumed no such civilizations existed. The implications crashed over her like a tidal wave. If humans could prove prior territorial claims, if they could establish legal authority through the Council's own laws, then half the galaxy's administrative structure would collapse overnight. Every human world, every sector where humans had been relocated or enslaved, could potentially be reclaimed through legal proceedings. "This is not how conquered peoples behave," she said, more to herself than to Santos. "Governor," he replied gently, "we were never conquered. We were temporarily displaced. There's a significant difference." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human cells emerged from hiding with legal documentation that turned 3 decades of council authority into administrative confusion. The archaeological discoveries from the Kepler sector had provided more than just proof of human heritage. They had supplied detailed territorial maps, administrative records, and, most importantly, legal frameworks that established human authority according to the Council's own laws. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now operating as a legal advocate rather than an infiltration specialist, stood before the arbitration court on Centauri Prime, surrounded by alien jurists who struggled to comprehend the implications of humanity's territorial claims. "Honored arbiters," she said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber, "we present evidence that human civilization established territorial authority across 37% of current council space approximately 12,000 years ago. Our claims predate every existing territorial agreement by several millennia." The lead arbiter, an ancient being from the crystalline hegemony whose consciousness had existed for over 1,000 years, studied the documentation with growing alarm. "Advocate Vasquez, these claims, if verified, would necessitate the restructuring of galactic governance. The legal precedent is clear, but the practical implications are substantial." "Yes," Vasquez agreed. "However, humanity does not seek to displace current populations or disrupt established civilizations. We merely request recognition of our legitimate territorial rights and appropriate compensation for 30,000 years of unauthorized occupation." The mathematical precision of the claim was breathtaking in its scope. Compensation for 12 millennia of territorial occupation, calculated at standard rates, would bankrupt the council treasury several times over. The alternative was negotiating new territorial agreements that recognized human authority across vast regions of space. Furthermore, Vasquez continued, producing additional documentation, recent analysis of council archaeological records shows that humans established the fundamental legal frameworks that became the basis for current galactic law. "We are not seeking accommodation within the existing system. We are the original architects of that system." In the viewing gallery, representatives from council member species shifted uncomfortably. The human legal claims were supported by evidence that met every standard of verification. More troubling, the humans had clearly spent decades preparing their case, gathering proof, and building legal strategies that anticipated every possible challenge. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the military dimension of humanity's emergence was revealing itself with equally devastating precision. Admiral Rebecca Torres, daughter of the lieutenant who had served under Admiral Chin during Earth's fall, commanded a fleet that officially didn't exist according to Council intelligence databases. "Status report," she requested from the command bridge of the battleship New Terra, a vessel constructed entirely from reverse-engineered alien technology and powered by energy systems derived from ancient human ruins. "All human fleets report ready status," replied Captain Morrison, grandson of Chen's executive officer. "Operation Phoenix is green across all fronts." Torres studied the tactical display showing Council fleet positions throughout their territory. For 3 decades, alien commanders had grown comfortable with their overwhelming technological superiority, confident that scattered human refugees posed no significant threat. They were about to learn how dangerous complacency could be. "Initiate simultaneous strikes. All targets are military installations and administrative centers. No civilian casualties, no permanent occupation. We're sending a message, not starting a genocide." Across the galaxy, human fleets emerged from hiding with technology that shouldn't have existed. Stealth systems that rendered ships invisible to Council sensors, weapons that penetrated energy shields thought impervious, and, most importantly, tactical coordination that spoke to communication networks the Council couldn't detect or disrupt. The Battle of Rigel Station lasted 14 minutes. Council forces, caught completely unprepared, watched their defensive perimeter collapse under assault from ships that appeared without warning and vanished before retaliation could be organized. When the smoke cleared, every Council vessel was disabled but intact, their crews alive but thoroughly defeated. Similar scenes played out simultaneously at 17 strategic locations. Human forces struck with precision that demonstrated intimate knowledge of Council military procedures, technological capabilities, and defensive protocols. They didn't seek conquest or destruction. They sought demonstration of capability. High Magistrate Vexthal received the reports in his private chambers on the Council homeworld, each new piece of intelligence contributing to a picture that challenged everything he thought he knew about humanity. 17 simultaneous strikes, all successful, all executed with technology that exceeds our current capabilities, his aide reported. No human casualties, minimal alien fatalities, but complete neutralization of our forces at every engagement. Vexthal studied tactical recordings from the battles, noting human ship designs that incorporated the best elements of multiple alien technologies while adding innovations that surpassed the original specifications. These weren't refugees using scavenged equipment. These were engineers who understood the underlying principles well enough to improve upon them. How long have they been building this fleet? Unknown, High Magistrate. Intelligence estimates suggest a minimum of 15 years, possibly longer. The construction sites remain undetected. 15 years. While the Council had assumed humanity was slowly dying in exile, they had been building an industrial base capable of producing fleets that outmatched alien technology. More than that, they had been planning operations with patience and foresight that suggested strategic thinking on a scale that dwarfed typical military planning. Sir, the aide continued nervously, there's more. We've received a transmission from the Human Fleet Command. The holographic display activated, revealing a human woman in military uniform that mixed familiar Earth traditions with new elements that suggested evolved cultural identity. Behind her stood officers representing multiple human ethnic backgrounds, their expressions unified in purpose and confidence. High Magistrate Vexthal, Admiral Torres began, I am Admiral Rebecca Torres of the Human Reclamation Fleet. I have a message from all humanity to the Galactic Council. Vexthal felt the same cold dread that had haunted him since Admiral Chen's final transmission 30 years before. The human admiral's tone was respectful but implacable, carrying authority that seemed to emerge from depths of conviction he couldn't fathom. The Galactic Council has occupied human territorial space for 12,000 years without authorization or compensation. During this occupation, Council forces attacked and destroyed human civilian populations, enslaved human workers, and denied humanity its rightful place in galactic civilization. These are serious accusations, Torres continued, but we understand that the Council acted from ignorance rather than malice. You genuinely believed humanity was a primitive species making its first expansion into space. You were mistaken. The admission of Council error was delivered without rancor, but with implications that made Vexthal's thorax constrict with anxiety. If humanity approached this as a misunderstanding rather than an act of war, they might be willing to negotiate. But they would negotiate from a position of strength that the Council was only beginning to understand. We have submitted our territorial claims to the Galactic Arbitration Court. We have demonstrated our military capabilities to ensure your attention. Now we wish to open negotiations for the peaceful restoration of human sovereignty over our ancestral territories. Vexthal recognized the precision of the human strategy. Legal claims that used the Council's own laws against them. Military demonstrations that proved their capability without triggering total war. And now diplomatic overtures that positioned them as reasonable parties seeking justice rather than revenge. We do not seek the destruction of the Council or the displacement of established civilizations, Torres concluded. We seek recognition of human rights and appropriate compensation for the unauthorized occupation of our space. We believe reasonable beings can reach reasonable agreements. The transmission ended, leaving Vexthal staring at an empty display while the implications of humanity's emergence crashed over him in waves. They weren't seeking revenge for Earth's destruction. They were seeking the restoration of an empire that had existed before the Council was even conceived. In that moment, he finally understood Admiral Chen's prophetic words. Humanity's destiny hadn't been sealed by the Council's actions. The Council's destiny had been sealed the moment they chose to attack Earth rather than attempt communication with humanity's true heirs. The humans were coming home. And they brought with them legal documents, technological superiority, and strategic patience that would reshape the galaxy according to plans that had been set in motion thousands of years before the first Council meeting. The age of Council dominance was ending. The age of human restoration had begun. The negotiations began in the neutral space of the arbitration station, a massive structure that had served as the galaxy's diplomatic center for over 2,000 years. What made these particular negotiations unprecedented was that for the first time since its construction, the Council found themselves responding to demands rather than making them. Dr. Sarah Chen Nakamura, great-granddaughter of the legendary admiral, led the human delegation with the same quiet intensity that had marked her ancestors' final stand. Across the vast conference chamber sat representatives from every major galactic civilization, their body language ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. "The territorial claims are extensive," she began, projecting holographic maps that showed human administrative boundaries from 12 millennia past. "However, we understand that current populations cannot be simply displaced. We propose a graduated transition to joint governance, with full sovereignty restoration occurring over a 50-year period." High Magistrate Vexthal studied the proposed timeline with growing comprehension of humanity's strategic sophistication. 50 years was sufficient time to prevent economic collapse while ensuring that human authority would eventually encompass nearly 40% of current council territory. It was a masterpiece of patient planning. Dr. Chen Nakamura, interjected Ambassador Krellfox of the Crystalline Hegemony, these proposals assume the validity of human territorial claims that predate recorded galactic history. Even if we accept your archaeological evidence, the practical implications are staggering. "The practical implications are negotiable," she replied calmly. "The legal foundation is not. The Galactic Arbitration Court has already ruled that our territorial claims meet all standards of evidence. The question now is whether we implement restoration through negotiation or through alternative means." The unstated alternative hung in the chamber's atmosphere like a gravitational field. Human fleets had demonstrated technological superiority in 17 simultaneous engagements. Human legal teams had proven their claims in galactic courts. Human intelligence networks had shown they possessed detailed knowledge of council operations across the galaxy. If negotiations failed, humanity possessed the capability to simply take what they claimed by right. But it was the human attitude that truly unnerved the council delegation. There was no anger, no desire for revenge, no emotional demand for justice. Instead, humanity approached these negotiations with the calm professionalism of administrators resolving a bureaucratic error. They weren't seeking punishment for Earth's destruction. They were seeking correction of an administrative oversight that had lasted 12,000 years. "The economic considerations alone," began Trade Director Yexmill from the Merchant Guild, "would destabilize galactic commerce. Human territorial claims encompass 60% of major trade routes and 70% of strategic resource production. Which is why we propose gradual implementation," Chen Nakamura responded, accessing detailed economic models that demonstrated months of careful planning. Joint authority initially, with human administrative control increasing by 5% annually. Current trade agreements would remain valid, existing commercial relationships would be preserved, and economic disruption would be minimized. Vexthal found himself impressed despite his growing dread. The humans had spent decades not just building fleets and gathering archaeological evidence, but developing comprehensive plans for galactic administration that addressed every practical concern. They weren't acting from impulse or emotion. They were implementing a strategy that had been refined over generations. Furthermore, she continued, human technological capabilities offer significant advantages to galactic civilization. Our energy systems are approximately 400% more efficient than current council standards. Our manufacturing techniques could revolutionize industrial production. Our computational networks could enhance communication and coordination across the galaxy. The offer was as brilliant as it was terrifying. Humanity wasn't just claiming territorial rights. They were positioning themselves as the solution to problems that had plagued galactic civilization for centuries. Inefficient energy systems, limited manufacturing capacity, communication delays across interstellar distances, all could be resolved through human technological advancement. Admiral Torres materialized via holographic projection from her flagship, adding the military dimension to human proposals. The Council faces increasing security challenges from extragalactic threats, piracy in the outer regions, and resource conflicts between member species. Human fleets could provide enhanced security while maintaining the Council's commitment to peaceful resolution of disputes. The subtext was clear. Human military superiority wasn't just a negotiating tool. It was a resource that the Council needed more than they wanted to admit. Recent intelligence reports had detected unusual energy signatures from beyond the galactic rim, suggesting potential threats that existing Council fleets might not be equipped to handle. "What you're proposing," Vexthal said slowly, "is the transformation of galactic civilization under human leadership. We're proposing the restoration of human territorial rights and the offering of human capabilities for mutual benefit," Chen Nakamura corrected. "Leadership implies dominance. We seek partnership. But partnership between equals and partnership between superior and subordinate were vastly different relationships. The humans were offering the Council a choice: accept gradual transition to human dominance through negotiation, or risk having that dominance imposed through alternative means. The negotiations continued for weeks, with human delegates demonstrating patience that bordered on the supernatural. They possessed overwhelming advantages in technology, legal standing, and strategic position, yet they approached every discussion with respectful professionalism and willingness to accommodate Council concerns. During the third week, the first external crisis emerged that would test human intentions. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic rim, moving in formation patterns that suggested intelligent direction. The signals matched no known technology in Council databases. Unknown vessels, estimated arrival in 6 standard months, reported the station's tactical officer. Energy signatures exceed anything in our experience. The Council delegation exchanged nervous glances. Their fleets were already weakened by human demonstrations of superiority. If external threats materialized, existing defenses might prove inadequate to protect galactic civilization. Admiral Torres received the report with calm interest. We've been tracking those signals for 3 months. Our deep space monitoring networks detected them shortly after they crossed the galactic boundary. Vexthal's mandibles clicked with surprise. You have monitoring networks beyond the galactic rim? Human expansion continued during the diaspora, Torres replied matter-of-factly. We established observation posts, supply depots, and defensive positions throughout extragalactic space. The approaching vessels appear to be scouts from a civilization that calls itself the Devourer Hegemony. The name alone sent chills through the Council delegation. But what truly alarmed them was the implication that humanity possessed intelligence and defensive capabilities that extended far beyond anything the Council had imagined. Our preliminary analysis suggests they're conducting reconnaissance in preparation for large-scale invasion, Torres continued. Their technology appears to be focused on energy absorption and biomass conversion. They're essentially galactic locusts, consuming civilizations and moving on to the next target. Chun Nakamura added context with the same calm professionalism that had marked all human contributions to the negotiations. Our archaeological records indicate that the Devourer Hegemony was the source of the Void Plague that forced our ancestors to implement the Rebirth Protocol 12,000 years ago. They've been wandering intergalactic space, consuming civilizations and growing stronger. Now they've found us again. The revelation transformed the entire negotiation dynamic. The Council wasn't just facing human territorial claims and superior technology. They were facing an external threat that had previously driven humanity's advanced ancestors to desperate measures. Without human cooperation, galactic civilization might face extinction. What are you proposing? Vexthal asked, though he already suspected the answer. Accelerated implementation of territorial restoration, Torres replied. Human fleets and defensive networks activated to protect galactic civilization. Joint Council Human Command Structure for coordinating defensive operations. And recognition that humanity's return to galactic leadership isn't just about territorial rights. It's about survival. The humans had played their final card with devastating precision. They weren't just offering partnership. They were offering salvation from a threat that the Council couldn't face alone. But that salvation came with the price of accepting human authority over the galaxy their ancestors had once ruled. Over the following days, as more intelligence about the approaching Devourer fleets became available, the Council delegation gradually understood the scope of humanity's strategic planning. The diaspora hadn't been random scattering of refugees. It had been deliberate positioning of defensive assets across galactic and extragalactic space. Human fleets hadn't just been hiding. They had been preparing for the return of the enemy that had forced their ancestors' retreat. The Rebirth Protocol, Chun Nakamura explained during a private briefing, wasn't just about preserving human civilization. It was about preparing for the Devourer's eventual return. Our ancestors knew they would come back. They designed our entire recovery to ensure we would be ready. Vexthal stared at tactical projections showing human defensive positions scattered across impossible distances. Monitoring stations beyond the galactic rim, supply bases in extragalactic void, fleets positioned to intercept threats before they reached inhabited systems. The scope of human preparation was staggering. You've been planning this for 12,000 years, he said, understanding finally dawning. Our ancestors planned the framework, she agreed. We've been implementing the details for the past 30 years. Admiral Chen's final message wasn't defiance. It was activation of protocols that had been established millennia before Earth's fall. The negotiations concluded with an agreement that fundamentally restructured galactic civilization. Human territorial rights were recognized with immediate effect. Joint governance would be implemented over a compressed 10-year timeline instead of 50. Human fleets would assume primary responsibility for galactic defense. And the Galactic Council would function as an advisory body under the restored human hegemony. As the agreement was signed, Vexthal reflected on the elegant precision of humanity's return. They had used the Council's own laws to establish legal authority, demonstrated military superiority without unnecessary destruction, and timed their emergence to coincide with external threats that made their protection essential. Admiral Chen was right, he said to Chen Nakamura as the ceremony concluded. Humanity's destiny was sealed. But it wasn't sealed by our conquest of Earth. It was sealed by your ancestors planning 12,000 years ago. She smiled with the same dangerous calm that had characterized all human interactions during the negotiations. High Magistrate, Earth's destruction was never about ending human expansion. It was about ensuring we would expand with proper motivation. As human fleets moved to intercept the approaching Devourer scouts, as human administrators began implementing new governmental structures, as human technology began upgrading galactic defensive systems, Vexthal understood that he had witnessed the return of the galaxy's true rulers. The Council era was ending, but perhaps that was for the best. The darkness beyond the galactic rim carried threats that would require human capabilities to survive. The age of human dominance was beginning again. And, this time, they were prepared for whatever tried to challenge their authority. 5 years after the restoration of human authority, the galaxy faced its first test under the new order. The Devourer hegemony's advanced fleets had penetrated the outer defensive perimeter, their biomechanical ships consuming entire star systems and converting the energy into ever larger vessels. What had begun as reconnaissance had become full-scale invasion. Fleet Admiral Elena Vasquez, now commanding the combined forces of the human hegemony, stood on the bridge of the Dreadnought Redemption watching tactical displays that showed enemy penetration across a front spanning 3,000 light-years. The scope of the threat validated every decision made during humanity's return to galactic leadership. Status report, she requested from her multinational command staff, a mix of human officers and alien specialists who had proven their competence during the integration process. Enemy forces have consumed 17 star systems in the past 6 months, reported Captain Thexmar, the former Zephyrian governor who had chosen to serve under human authority rather than return to her homeworld in defeat. Their fleet strength is increasing exponentially with each system they devour. Vasquez studied the progression patterns with professional interest. The Devourers move like a plague across space, their biomechanical vessels growing stronger with each victory. But, unlike 12,000 years ago, humanity was prepared for this enemy. The Rebirth Protocol hadn't just preserved human civilization. It had created the tools necessary for final victory. Initiate Phase 1 of Operation Retribution, she ordered. All human fleets to defensive positions. Activate the Guardian Network. Across the galaxy, ancient human installations that had lain dormant since the original civilization's fall awakened with purpose that spanned millennia. Massive energy collectors emerged from planetary cores, stellar engineering projects activated after eons of dormancy, and weapons platforms that existed on scales that dwarfed conventional understanding of warfare began charging their systems. The Guardian Network was humanity's ultimate legacy from their ancient empire. A defensive system that encompassed the entire galaxy, powered by stellar energy and controlled through quantum networks that transcended normal spacetime limitations. The Council had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years without ever suspecting that they lived within the greatest fortress ever constructed. Admiral Torres materialized via quantum communication from her position at the galactic core, where ancient human installations drew power directly from the supermassive black hole that anchored the galaxy's structure. Guardian Network at 60% activation. Estimated full power in 72 hours. What about civilian evacuations? Asked Commander Morrison, now serving as Vasquez's strategic coordinator. Unnecessary, she replied calmly. The Guardian Network was designed to protect inhabited systems while eliminating threats. Civilian populations will be safer maintaining normal activities than fleeing in panic. The confidence in her voice reflected 5 years of discovery about humanity's true heritage. Every archaeological site had revealed new layers of ancient planning, technological sophistication that made current science seem primitive by comparison. The humans who had implemented the rebirth protocol had possessed capabilities that approached the theoretical limits of physics. On the bridge's main display, real-time images showed devourer fleets approaching the heavily populated Centauri sector. Their biomechanical vessels pulsed with absorbed energy, their living hulls expanding as they consumed matter from previous conquests. They moved with predatory confidence, expecting the same easy victories that had characterized their expansion across the galaxy's edge. "Enemy contact in the Centauri perimeter," reported the tactical officer. "They're beginning consumption operations on the outer system's gas giant." Vasquez watched the enemy fleet deploy with professional assessment. The Devourers fought like a biological organism, their individual ships functioning as cells in a larger entity. Their strategy was simple but effective: overwhelm local defenses, consume available matter and energy, grow stronger, repeat across the next target. "Activate Centauri Guardian Station," she ordered. The response was immediate and devastating. What the Devourers had assumed was an uninhabited moon suddenly revealed its true nature as energy collected from the system's star focused through crystalline matrices that had been growing for 12,000 years. The weapon that emerged wasn't conventional technology but applied stellar engineering on a scale that redefined the possible. The Devourer fleet ceased to exist in 0.7 seconds. Not destroyed, not defeated, but simply converted into component atoms that were then absorbed into the Guardian network's power systems. The enemy's own consumption capabilities were turned against them with efficiency that approached perfection. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as Guardian stations revealed themselves from positions that had been carefully planned before most current civilizations had achieved spaceflight. Each activation added to the network's power, creating a feedback loop that made humanity's defensive systems stronger with each enemy contact. High Magistrate Vexthal, now serving as liaison between the former Council species and human authority, watched the battles from the command center on New Terra. His role had evolved from conqueror to administrator to grateful ally as humanity's capabilities became clear. "The scale of this defensive system," he said to Dr. Chen Nakamura, who served as his primary contact with human leadership, "exceeds anything we imagined possible. Your ancestors essentially weaponized the entire galaxy." "Not weaponized," she corrected gently. "Optimized. The Guardian network serves multiple functions: defense, energy distribution, communication, and, most importantly, ensuring that galactic civilization can survive any threat." The distinction was important. Humanity's ancient empire hadn't just built weapons. They had created a comprehensive system for protecting and nurturing life throughout the galaxy. Every species that had achieved spaceflight under Council administration had unknowingly benefited from human infrastructure that regulated stellar radiation, stabilized planetary orbits, and maintained the cosmic conditions necessary for complex life. But the power required, Vexthal pressed, how did they gather energy on this scale? Shun Nakamura gestured toward displays showing the Guardian network's activation patterns. They harvested it over geological time periods. Every star in the galaxy contributes a tiny fraction of its output to the system. Individually insignificant, collectively overwhelming. The network draws less energy from each star than solar wind variations produce naturally. The elegant simplicity of the solution was characteristic of human engineering philosophy. Rather than demanding massive resources from individual sources, they had designed systems that gathered minimal contributions from everywhere, creating capabilities that no individual component could support alone. As the Devourer invasion forces encountered more Guardian stations, their advance slowed and, then, reversed. The biomechanical vessels that had seemed unstoppable found themselves facing defensive systems that consumed them faster than they could consume their targets. For the first time in their expansion across multiple galaxies, the Devourers faced an enemy with superior consumption capabilities. "Admiral," reported Captain Morrison from his coordination station, "were receiving communication attempts from the Devourer command structure. They appear to be requesting negotiation." Vasquez considered the development with interest. The Devourers were essentially a galactic organism, operating through collective intelligence that spanned their entire fleet. If they were attempting communication, it suggested they had encountered something beyond their ability to simply consume. "Put them through." The communication that emerged was unlike anything previously recorded. Not individual voices but a collective consciousness that spoke with the authority of consumed civilizations spanning millions of years. Their translation systems struggled to convert concepts that had no equivalent in standard galactic languages. Human entities, we seek understanding. Your defensive capabilities exceed our consumption parameters. This is unprecedented in our expansion across 17 galaxies. Vasquez responded with the same calm professionalism that had marked all human interactions since their return. Devourer Collective, you are attempting to consume a civilization that has prepared specifically for your arrival. Our ancestors encountered your species 12,000 years ago. This defensive system exists solely to prevent your expansion into this galaxy. The pause that followed suggested intensive communication within the Devourer Collective. When they responded, their transmitted concepts carried undertones that the translation systems interpreted as surprise and something approaching respect. You are the small flesh entities from the spiral time ago. You have grown beyond our consumption calculations. We acknowledge superior adaptation. We acknowledge your capabilities as well, Vasquez replied. However, this galaxy is under human protection. We offer you safe passage to extragalactic space and information about uninhabited galaxies where you can pursue expansion without threatening existing civilizations. The offer demonstrated humanity's evolved approach to galactic governance. Rather than seeking the destruction of the Devourers, they were offering redirection that would eliminate the threat while allowing the biomechanical civilization to continue its existence elsewhere. This is acceptable. We will withdraw to designated territories. The small flesh entities have achieved impressive growth patterns. We will remember this adaptation success. As the Devourer fleets withdrew from galactic space, escorted by human vessels to ensure their departure, Vasquez reflected on the completion of a cycle that had spanned 12 millennia. Humanity's ancestors had fled from this enemy, implementing desperate protocols to ensure their species' survival. Now their descendants had achieved sufficient capability to negotiate with that same threat from a position of absolute strength. Phase 2 of Operation Retribution, she announced to her command staff. Begin galaxy-wide infrastructure improvements. Full activation of the Guardian network for peaceful purposes. The transformation that followed exceeded even human projections for post-conflict development. Guardian stations that had revealed themselves as weapons systems adapted to provide unprecedented energy distribution, communication enhancement, and stellar engineering capabilities. Civilizations across the galaxy discovered that their technological capabilities had suddenly multiplied beyond previous theoretical limits. Trade routes that had required months to traverse could now be completed in days through human-designed hyperspace corridors. Energy shortages that had plagued industrial worlds for centuries disappeared as Guardian stations provided clean, unlimited power. Communication delays that had hampered galactic administration vanished as quantum networks linked every inhabited system instantaneously. Dr. Shun Nakamura addressed the reconstructed Galactic Assembly 5 years after the Devourer withdrawal, speaking to representatives of civilizations that had grown prosperous beyond their wildest projections under human administration. The rebirth protocol is now complete, she announced to the gathered delegates. Humanity has reclaimed its rightful position as guardian of galactic civilization. But, guardianship is not dominance. It is service to the greater good of all sapient species. The distinction was crucial to understanding humanity's evolved philosophy of governance. Unlike the Council's administrative approach, which had focused on maintaining order through authority, human leadership emphasized optimization of potential. Every species was encouraged to develop their unique capabilities while contributing to the greater whole. Vexthal, now serving as Chief Administrator for Integrated Species Relations, rose to address the Assembly. On behalf of all former Council civilizations, I acknowledge that humanity's return has exceeded every projection for beneficial governance. The galaxy has achieved prosperity and security that was impossible under our previous administrative structure. His words carried the weight of lived experience. Under Council administration, the galaxy had remained stable but stagnant, with technological development limited by bureaucratic oversight and interspecies conflicts consuming resources that could have been directed toward advancement. Under human leadership, every civilization had achieved capabilities that approached their maximum potential. But, more importantly, he continued, humanity has demonstrated that galactic civilization can face any threat when properly organized and defended. The Devourer invasion proved that our universe contains dangers we had never imagined. Without human preparation and leadership, we would have faced extinction. As the assembly session concluded, Vasquez stood at the observation deck of the orbital platform, looking down at Earth in its restored glory. The homeworld had been rebuilt not as a monument to the past but as a symbol of humanity's evolved understanding. Cities that integrated the best of ancient human culture with advanced technology that surpassed the achievements of their ancestors. Orbital installations that demonstrated humanity's mastery of stellar engineering. And, at the poles, memorial sites that honored those who had died during the Council's assault while celebrating the vision that had made their sacrifice meaningful. Admiral Chan's final message echoed across 40 years of human history, its prophetic words finally revealed in their full context. Your destiny is sealed. The Council's destiny had indeed been sealed by their attack on Earth, but not through human vengeance. It had been sealed by human vision that transcended individual civilizations to encompass the survival and prosperity of all galactic life. The universe was vast and filled with wonders that lay beyond current exploration. But, within this galaxy, under human guardianship, every species could pursue their dreams of advancement while contributing to a greater destiny that would echo across cosmic time. The age of human leadership had begun not with conquest but with service, not with dominance but with protection, not with revenge but with fulfillment of humanity's true purpose as guardians of civilization among the stars. Earth's children had come home. And they had brought with them the keys to unlock every species' potential for greatness. The galaxy would never again face extinction alone, for it was under the protection of a species that had learned to transform catastrophe into opportunity, defeat into victory, and endings into new beginnings that surpassed every previous achievement. The stars themselves sang with the promise of futures beyond imagination, and humanity stood ready to guide galactic civilization toward destinies that exceeded the dreams of gods.